Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, Eastern Consolidated, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, Aerial Property Advisors, Perfect Building Maintenance. Additional funding has been provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, AVR Realty Company, Avison Young, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, Cohen Equities, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Genova Burns, Handro Properties, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Hodges Ward Elliott Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Polsonelli, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Knackle Group at Cushman & Wakefield, Maring-Goff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
Kassel, Germany, Israel, Borough Park, Brooklyn College. I want to do research. I want to learn about the Holocaust. I want to learn about children of the Holocaust. I want to get involved with all of these societies. I want to be responsible for teaching about the survivors, the kids and everything. I want to be a psychologist. I want to help humanity. I want to write books. I want to write movies. I have Eva Fogelman. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me the story about your mother and father, because they're interesting stories. Tell me about your father first.
Okay.
And go back to the initial time when his family came here.
Well, my father was born in Dukshitz, which is a small town. Today it's Lithuania. It used to be Poland. It's one of those areas that kept switching. And his father came to the United States in 1907. He was here for 5 years. He brought Alfred Kazins and Pearl Bell Kazins. And he sent home a picture without a beard. And so my grandmother's father said to her, "You can't go to America." And people said to him, "Well, why don't you just divorce her?" He says, "No, I can't." And he went back. And then my father was born in 1913.
Okay, so your grandfather goes back to Lithuania, and your father's born in 1913.
Right. And my grandfather died in 1923. My father's 10 years old. And my grandmother, who basically was a seamstress, left with 5 children. And my grandfather had a general store, but she was not a businesswoman and couldn't run it. So my father, at about 11 years old, gets sent to Vilna to be with relatives.
And this is 1934.
Correct. And no, this is 1924. So 1924, my father gets sent to Vilna, and he works in a bakery of relatives, and also he then gets to study in the Slobodka Yeshiva. And the rabbis realized that after yeshiva, he would go to the library and read communist books, and so they said, "You're not destined to be a rabbi." My grandmother's brother went to the United States in the 20s, and he had asked my father to come. And he is Rav Ruderman, who started the yeshiva in Baltimore, Ner Israel in Baltimore. My father's family, that's his mother and siblings, went to Palestine before it was Israel in 1935. My father,
How'd they decide to go to Palestine in 1930?
well, the kids grew up very Zionistic, even though my grandmother was very pious and religious. What brought a sense of life to my father's siblings was the whole Zionist movement. And every Friday night and Saturday afternoon, they would be singing songs. My father was already of Polish army age, and so he could not go with the rest of the family, so he ends up staying. But this time he's already in the Polish army. He had studied to be a baker with the family, and in 1939 the Polish army disbanded, and so he escaped back to Vilna, and they were taking men off the streets. So he escaped to Belarus to be with an aunt and uncle who had no children there. And he was under the Russian rule for 2 years, from 1939 to 1941, and he worked in a bakery there. When the Germans marched in June of 1941, a ghetto was built. He continued to work in the bakery there. On Purim, which was March of 1942, the Germans intercepted the Jews going to work. There were 1,000 Jews living in Ilya, and they shot them in a half a day. My father was very lucky in that he had already gone to work very early in the morning, and so the baker supervisor put him in the attic. And then when the Germans came in and said, "Are there any Jews here?" He says, "No Jews here." And so he then was able to escape into the woods. And I was very moved when one day I'm sitting with my father in Nantucket, and my father sees the rose bush, the rose hip bushes, and he says, "You see those berries? You know, these are the berries that I ate for 6 months. You know, I was like an animal." And he lived for 6 months going from house to house, trying to get some milk, living in a ditch. And then he was with a friend, and that friend knew one of the Belarusian farmers in the area. And so eventually the farmer would bring him some food at night, have the kids come, take his lice-infested clothes and wash it. And the Belarusian, Ivan Safonov, was part of the Belarusian partisans. And he got my father and his comrade into it, even though they don't take Jews into the Belarusian partisans, because my father had been in the army. They figured he would be a good soldier.
But wasn't there something with him trying to be court-martialed?
Yes, what happened is that my father was in the same woods that the Bielski partisans were, and he had much more food than they did, and he started throwing them bread, and he was caught, and he was court-martialed. They said, "If we catch you again, we're going to kill you." But because he was such a valuable soldier and, you know, blew up a lot of the train tracks, they kept him. And then he was in the military police of the Red Army. And because he knew languages, at Liberation, he went to Germany to be a translator. And while he went to Germany, he was able to start, buying different things.
Right, he was like trading cigarettes and other
cigarettes
things.
And
he was
chocolate,
a merchant, right, in
right.
the displaced citizens camp.
No, this is way before. This is still at Liberation. Because he was still with the Red
Russian
Army, so he had to go back. And then because he had some goods, he was able to bribe a guard and escape Belarus.
Now tell me about Mom's side.
Sure. My mother came from Vyshkov, which is a town about 50 minutes out of Warsaw. When the Germans invaded in September 1 of 1939, which is on a Thursday, her brother, she had 5 siblings altogether. There were 5 children altogether. Her brother said, "Kinderlech, we got to get out of here." And so they then got on a horse and buggy. They just took whatever possessions they can. And they started going east, and this was a very long journey. My mother's family was in the tannery business. So they all knew leather very well, and that's something that helped them when on their journey they went first to Bialystok, and there were a lot of Jews who were camping out in the synagogue there, and then eventually they crossed the border and went into Russia and were taken to a labor camp off the Arctic Ocean, and after 6 months they were sent back to Poland. And they were very lucky because they didn't take any Russian papers. They were still refugees and were able to go back to Russia. And then they were in Uzbekistan. And my mother was always a businesswoman. She, at the age of 16, she got herself a horse, and she was working in the cotton fields, and she was working as a secretary and looking over the workers as this young teenager. And she always tells me about how her mother always had a huge pot of soup, and people would know they can always come and get some food there. My mother was very lucky in that both her mother and father and all 5 siblings survived the war.
So what happens at the liberation?
At liberation, there was a pact between the Germans and the Russians to let Jews come into Germany, and there were displaced persons camps that were built both by the Russians and the Americans and the British. And my mother ends up in Kassel with her family.
And your father's in Kassel also?
No, the way that they met is first they caught a glimpse of each other in Szczecin, which is a town right between Poland and Germany, where people would go and take a look for relatives that were missing. I think they sort of saw each other, but my father saw my mother on a bus in Germany, and he asked her, "Do you know where we can stay?" And she said, "Well, why don't you come to our DP camp?" And so they came to the DP camp. And then they started doing business together of buying and selling. My mother would always say, every person you met, you would say, "Vos koste, vos verkoste." What are you buying and what are you selling?
So they were
and
traders.
They became traders, right. They got married in 1948.
And then their first daughter is born.
I'm born in 1949.
How do they decide then to leave the camp to go to Israel?
Well, the camp was just a way station. My father had not seen his family for many years. They, in fact, did not even know that he was alive till he sent him, the first postcard after liberation. And so he wanted to be reunited with his family. My mother's parents and 2 of her siblings went to Israel. 3 of her siblings went to Israel, and 2 came to the United States. They were they thought there would be better opportunities for them.
So when do your parents and you move to Israel?
We moved to Israel in 1949. I was just a couple of months old. And one thing about when I was born in a half burnt out hospital in Kassel, my mother overheard all the nurses saying, "Those Jews, all they do is have babies." And
you realized it was safe at your parents'
so that
leave.
It was time to, definitely time to leave.
So they end up in Israel. What does your father do in Israel?
My father was a baker in Israel. He was able to find a cooperative, and he worked in a bakery and also did the bookkeeping for them as well.
So you live in Israel for what, approximately?
We lived in Israel for 10 years.
And then your parents decide?
Well, what happened is that my mother's brother came to Israel to look for a wife because he couldn't find a wife in America. He would go to all these parties, and these women would say, "Well, what university did you go to?" He said, "Well, I went to the University of Siberia." "What did you study there?" "I studied trees." So that was the end of the conversation. So he went to Israel to look for a bride, and when he saw the conditions under which we were living, He said he just could not believe the poverty that we were living in.
But you said to me when we got together, you didn't feel it was a
I did not feel any poverty at all. We had one room, and when you came in, there was a kitchen, and we had a bathroom indoors, but we had a lot of land. We had apple trees, we had orange trees, we also had a chicken coop, and, we all wore, shorts and T-shirts and ran around, and the only movie I ever saw was they brought a Danny Kaye movie, and that was my only exposure to movies, and but everybody was the same, so we didn't feel any poverty.
Now it's 1959, right?
Right.
And 1959, the family moves to New York and ends up in Borough Park.
Right. I should also say that in 1956, my father fought in the war, the Sinai War.
Mom and Pop and you and your sister at this time?
Yes, my sister was born in 1952.
Moved to Borough Park. And tell me about growing up in Borough Park.
Well,
your father gets a job as a baker.
My father got a job as a baker, and then after a few years, they wanted to buy a bakery. And my mother, by the way, worked in a factory. Kodak cameras in those days had cases, and there was a factory right near the house. And then it was time to go into business. My mother's a real businesswoman. And so they were going to buy a bakery, and my mother said, oh, you have to work at night, and, it's not that great. And her family had been in the knitting business, and one day she came home and said, we have a knitting factory. And so...
Wait a second. She said to your father, we have a knitting factory?
Well, no,
the baker got into the knitting?
No, obviously, they discussed it amongst themselves, but, I didn't hear the conversations.
So they get a knitting factory in Brooklyn Heights.
Correct.
And you're selling the schmatters to the people in the garment district.
Well, yeah, they had jobbers, right. And
so let's talk about growing up initially in Borough Park. Okay. So where did you go to public school?
So I went to public school, PS 131, and then Pershing Junior High School, and then I went to John Jay High School.
And you were a cheerleader. We have a picture of cheerleader.
I was a cheerleader. I was also very active in B'nai B'rith. I was president of my chapter, and then regionally I was chair of Jewish Heritage. We would go to camp during the summertime, and then part of the time we had some relatives in Brighton Beach by the beach, and so we would go there for a week. That was a real treat.
So when did your parents decide to buy the house in Batchelder Street?
On Bragg Street. That's next door to Batchelder Street. That's
you had the relatives across the street.
Exactly, on Batchelder Street. Exactly.
Right. So they moved to Sheepshead Bay.
Right. So we moved to Sheepshead Bay when I was a senior in high school.
But you graduated high school early.
I graduated high school in 3.5 years.
People say, how did they become a psychologist? How did they get their interest? You said there was a book about Freud. You saw a book about Freud.
The interpretation of dreams was somehow the landlady of the building had it floating around, so I would look at it from time to time.
But you also said to me when we got together, part of your education when you were in Israel is that for some unknown reason there was an encyclopedia?
Yeah, I told you we were very poor. We had very few books. So my uncle who got married in Israel gave us, because my mother had organized the wedding and everything, he gave us a present of a encyclopedia.
So the combination of the encyclopedia plus the Freud book helps the girl who goes to Brooklyn College, right?
Well, I always thought I was president of the Teachers Club in high school, and I guess again, I had a very limited world, and, everybody said you should be a teacher, and so that's what I thought I was going to be. And once I got to college and took a course in psychology and also went on a retreat with psychologists and saw what psychologists do and what it is one can learn about themselves, I said, that's for me.
So you graduate Brooklyn College when you were about 19?
20, yeah.
And what do you do then?
And then I went to study rehabilitation counseling, thinking I was going to work with immigrants. And
Then you go for your master's
And so then I went for my master's in rehabilitation counseling
at NYU.
at NYU.
So now you're about 21 or 22, and how do you decide to move up to Boston?
I got married, and my husband got a job in Boston to start an office of the New England Zionist
So
Federation.
talk to me about the initial time in Boston, because the Boston was very instrumental in your later career.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I was very involved in the Jewish feminist movement in New York. I was part of the first group as Rat Nashim, and in 1973 we had the first Jewish feminist conference in New York. And since I had moved to Boston, I was asked to try to bring women from Boston. And it is, so that became a core group that I was quite involved in. We used to meet every week. And in that group, there was another child of Holocaust survivors like myself.
You're a child of a Holocaust survivor. You know, fortunately, your father survived because of the survivors who helped him survive, okay? You know, the righteous Gentiles and the other people. Your mother was fortunate also that she didn't lose her family. But growing up, was there a discussion about the Holocaust?
Well, yeah.
Because many survivors didn't want to talk about it.
Right. What was interesting is that my mother would always tell my father's story, since his was more adventurous.
More adventurous.
And
right.
And also, in the early days, Holocaust survivors who had escaped to Russia, people said, "Oh, you weren't in a concentration camp. You weren't in ghetto. You're not really a survivor." And so my mother would always tell my father's story, and then later on in life, she would tell much more her own story.
So let's talk about what happens in Boston. That you meet this group of Holocaust survivors.
No, I first meet this group of women. I then read this article about a conversation amongst children of Holocaust survivors who I knew. It was part of Response magazine that had a separate issue on children of survivors. This is 1975. And so when I saw the article, and my friend Bella Saverin saw the article too, we said, this is a group. And so we approached the Hillel director, Rabbi Joe Pollack, at Boston University, whether we can do such a group, whether we can do a group for children of survivors at the Hillel at Boston University. It turns out he himself was a Holocaust survivor. He was a child from Holland who was in Bergen-Belsen, and he was already on a heap of dead people, and somebody recognized him and pulled him out. And his mother said, "If we survive, we're going to be religious." And he became a rabbi and devoted his life to Jewish students. And so he was very excited about the group. And this is the same time that Elie Wiesel had just started teaching a course on the Holocaust at Boston University. And so Elie Wiesel would say, people come, if they can't talk to their parents, they come to my class, and if my class is not enough, they'll come to the groups. And so we put up posters around Boston University, all the schools, the Kosher Busher Stop, the Jewish bookstore, and we got quite a few people who volunteered to be in the group. And that 1976 spring, we already had 2 groups.
And then what happens after?
And then what happened is that Helen Epstein, who's a child of Holocaust survivors, wrote a magazine piece called Heirs of the Holocaust on June 19th, 1977. And more than 2 million people had read that. And it is that magazine piece that gave children of Holocaust survivors their identity as children of survivors. Before that, they were not an identifiable group.
What do you mean by their identity as children of survivors?
Well,
before that they weren't.
How does being a child of Holocaust survivors affect your Jewish identity? How does it affect your perception? How does it affect your interaction within the family, outside of the family? And before that, children of survivors didn't really think, they thought, gee, I'm different, but I don't really know how I am different from other people, except one difference, obviously, that stood out is we don't have grandparents. And we light many more memorial candles when it comes to Yom Kippur. But besides that, so Helen Epstein's article created the language of how do we communicate about what makes us different from our American Jewish peers. After we did the groups, we realized that children of Holocaust survivors indeed are mourning relatives they don't even know. And so this really is more of a communal mourning in addition to a personal mourning. And so we went to Rabbi Yitzhak Greenberg saying, we got to have a conference for children of survivors.
And that conference took place?
And then the conference eventually took place in New York in 1979, and we had 600 children of survivors from throughout the United States. And that starts a whole movement of starting groups for children of survivors, organizations, self-help groups, education about the Holocaust. Many of the mandatory Holocaust education that we now have around the country was started by children of survivors going to local boards of educations. And then there were also other political activities.
So what we're going to do in part 2 is continue the story of the children of survivors and then the survivors and your career.
Thank you.
So we'll come back and we'll discuss that next week.
Okay, thank you.